The rain-slicked streets of Chicago gleamed under the sodium glow of street lamps, the kind of night where the wind off Lake Michigan carried the sharp tang of wet asphalt and distant diesel exhaust. Elena Vasquez huddled under the awning of a rundown diner on the edge of the industrial district, her threadbare coat doing little to fend off the chill. At 24, she was no stranger to long shifts and empty pockets, waitressing by day, scraping by on tips that barely covered her cramped apartment's rent. But tonight, as thunder rumbled like a warning from the shadowed warehouses lining the river, something felt off. The usual late-night stragglers hadn't shown, and the air hummed with an unnatural quiet, broken only by the slap of puddles under passing tires. Inside, the diner was a relic: faded formica counters, the sizzle of grease from the grill, and the faint, comforting smell of coffee brewing too long. Elena wiped down the counter for the third time, her dark hair pulled into a practical ponytail, when the bell above the door jingled sharply. She looked up, expecting another trucker or insomniac local. Instead, a man staggered in, broad-shouldered and impeccably dressed despite the downpour, tailored wool coat dripping, face pale under the harsh fluorescence. He clutched his throat, eyes watering, breaths coming in ragged wheezes. Behind him, two shadows lingered at the window, scanning the street like predators. "Help," he rasped, collapsing onto a stool. Elena's instincts kicked in. Years of watching her mother battle asthma in their tiny home had made her quick with a crisis. She grabbed a glass of water and an epinephrine auto-injector from the diner's battered first aid kit, kept stocked for the rough crowd that sometimes wandered in. "Sir, can you breathe? Are you allergic? What's your trigger?" He nodded weakly, fumbling in his pocket for what looked like a custom inhaler, but his hands shook too badly. The men outside exchanged glances. One spoke into a wrist mic, voice muffled by the rain, before one stepped inside, hand hovering near his jacket. Elena didn't hesitate. She jabbed the injector into his thigh through his slacks, steady and sure, then guided him to lean forward. Breathe slow, in through the nose, out through the mouth. His wheezing eased after a tense minute, color returning to his sharp features. High cheekbones, a jawline shadowed with stubble, eyes like polished obsidian. "Who the hell are you?" the newcomer growled, his accent thick with South Side grit, positioning himself between Elena and the door. He was built like a linebacker, earpiece coiled like a snake. "Elena, I work here," she said evenly, wiping her hands on her apron. No point in fear. She'd dealt with worse than muscle in this neighborhood. He looked like he was anaphylaxing. "You his security?" The recovering man straightened, waving off his guard with a subtle hand gesture. "Dante Rossi," he said, voice still rough but commanding, like gravel under boots. And yeah, something like that. He studied her, unblinking, as if cataloging every detail, the lack of perfume on her skin, the simple cotton blouse unadorned by jewelry. Rossi Enterprises loomed in Elena's mind. Everyone knew the name. Legitimate shipping on the surface, whispers of deeper currents in the docks and back alleys. A magnate who ruled from penthouses and private clubs, untouchable. The guard muttered into his comms. "Clear for now, but we're exposed here." Dante nodded, pulling a slim wallet from his coat, crisp hundreds fanned out like a promise. "For the save, and discretion." Elena pushed the money back gently. "Keep it. Just glad you're okay. What set you off? Bees? Nuts?" His lips twitched, almost a smile. "Women." The word hung absurd, but his eyes darkened with truth. "Perfumes, lotions, the chemicals, severe reaction. My detail keeps them at arm's length." He glanced at the empty diner, the rain sheeting the windows. But tonight, complication. Meeting went south, needed air, away from the smoke and scents. Elena frowned, piecing it together. The industrial district wasn't a place for a man like him to wander alone, even with guards. A rival crew? Internal shakeup? She didn't pry. Survival meant minding your business. But as Dante stood, steadier now, he paused at the door. You smell like nothing but rain and coffee. Clean. If you ever need a favor. He slipped a plain black card into her hand, embossed with a single phone number, no name. The guard shot her a warning look, and they melted into the night, tires hissing on wet pavement as a sleek SUV pulled up from the shadows. Elena pocketed the card, heart pounding not from fear, but curiosity. Why had he come here, of all places? The diner sat on the fringe of Rossi territory, near the river where shipments vanished into fog-shrouded barges. She locked up early, the bell's jingle echoing like a question, and trudged home through the storm. Her apartment was a third-floor walk-up in a brick tenement, walls thin enough to hear the neighbors' arguments and the distant wail of sirens. Inside, the air smelled of damp plaster and instant noodles. She kicked off her shoes, replaying the encounter. Dante Rossi, the man who built an empire on steel and secrets, allergic to the very world that orbited him. A man who avoided entanglements, especially with women, or so the tabloids hinted in their veiled scandals. Sleep came fitfully, broken by dreams of shadowed figures on the docks. Morning brought gray light filtering through cracked blinds, and a knock at the door that jolted her awake. She peered through the peephole. 2 men in dark suits, faces impassive. Miss Vasquez? Mr. Rossi requests your presence, for gratitude and a proposition. Her pulse raced. Turn them away, and the card burned a hole in her drawer. Accept, and step into a current she couldn't control. But debts in this city had a way of circling back, and curiosity was a debt of its own. As she dressed hurriedly, jeans, a plain sweater, no makeup to tempt fate, the first clue slipped in unnoticed. A black sedan idling across the street, its driver watching her window with binoculars. By the time she stepped out, flanked by the suits, the vehicle had vanished into traffic. But the unease lingered, like the faint hum of a generator in the distance, powering something vast and hidden. What proposition could a man like Dante Rossi have for a girl like her? And why did it feel like the river's current was already pulling her under? The sleek black Lincoln glided through Chicago's morning traffic, the city's pulse thrumming against the tinted windows, horns blaring from cabs, the metallic screech of elevated trains overhead. Elena sat in the back seat, wedged between the 2 suits, their colognes faint but present, like a calculated risk. She kept her hands folded in her lap, staring at the passing warehouses along the Chicago River, their rusted hulks looming like silent guardians. The water below churned gray and restless, carrying the faint scent of oil and fish even through the sealed doors. Why had she agreed? Gratitude, maybe, or the gnawing curiosity that had kept her tossing all night. Rossi's card still sat in her pocket, a weight heavier than its cardstock. The driver, a stocky man with a shaved head and a scar tracing his jaw, glanced in the rear view. Mr. Rossi appreciates your time, miss. Won't take long. His voice was neutral, but his eyes flicked to the mirrors too often, scanning for tails. Elena nodded, saying nothing. She'd grown up in Pilsen, where silence was currency in the face of authority. The car turned off the main drag, slipping into the loop's shadowed underbelly. Tall glass towers rising like monoliths, their bases fortified with brass-plated doors and discreet cameras winking from cornices. They pulled into an underground garage beneath one of Rossi Enterprises' unassuming office buildings, the air thick with the hum of fluorescent lights and the tang of concrete dust. Escorted through a service elevator that hummed upward without a single stop, Elena's unease grew. No buttons lit the panel. It responded only to a key fob one suit flashed. Restricted access, he muttered, as if reading her mind. The doors parted on the 32nd floor, revealing a corridor lined with frosted glass walls, the kind that muffled sound and hid prying eyes. A faint whir of ventilation fans stirred the air, cool and odorless. Sterile, like a hospital wing. At the end, double doors swung open to a private suite, floor-to-ceiling windows overlooking the river's serpentine curve, leather furniture in deep espresso tones, and a conference table scattered with blueprints and encrypted tablets. No perfumes here, no flowers. The space smelled of polished wood and fresh linen, as if allergies dictated the very atmosphere. Dante Rossi stood by the window, back to the door, his silhouette sharp against the diffused daylight. He turned as they entered, dressed in a charcoal suit that fit like armor, no tie to constrict. His eyes met hers, intense, appraising, lingering a beat longer than propriety allowed. "Miss Vasquez, thank you for coming." His voice carried that same gravel edge, smoother now without the wheeze. He gestured to a chair opposite him, dismissing the suits with a nod. They filed out, the door clicking shut like a vault seal. Elena sat, the leather creaking under her. "Call me Elena. Your men didn't give details. What's this about?" She kept her tone even, but her mind raced. Proposition from a man like him. Favors in his world weren't free. Dante leaned against the table, arms crossed, a subtle tension in his shoulders. "Last night, you saved my life. Not many would react that fast, or ask for nothing in return." He paused, studying her face, the faint shadows under her eyes from a sleepless night, the unadorned simplicity that had drawn him to the diner. Rossi Enterprises handles logistics, shipping, imports. But the river's full of currents, rivals who don't play fair. I have. Sensitivities that make trust a liability. Women especially complicate things. He touched his throat absently, the memory of swelling fresh. "Doctors say it's rare, but it's kept me isolated. No close calls until you." She shifted, the city's hum vibrating through the glass. "I'm not looking for complications. I just did what anyone would." A ghost of a smile crossed his lips. "Anyone wouldn't, and that's why I need someone like you." He slid a folder across the table, manila, unmarked. Inside, a contract outline, generous salary for personal assistance. Not arm candy, something practical. "My son's turning 5 next month. Birthday at the estate. I need a neutral party, clean, no scents, no agendas, to help coordinate. Security's tight, but with my condition, crowds are a minefield. You'll have protection, a driver, access to resources. In return, discretion. And if it works," his eyes darkened, voice lowering, "a place in my circle. Stability for a woman scraping by." Elena's fingers traced the paper's edge, the ink crisp against her skin. Stability. Her rent was 3 months late, her mother's medical bills piling like autumn leaves. But Rossi's world? The folder included a non-disclosure clause thick as a ledger, references to contingency protocols that screamed more than shipping manifests. "Why me? You could hire anyone." "Because you saw me vulnerable and didn't flinch." He straightened, the river's reflection dancing in his gaze. "And because last night, someone tailed me to that diner. Not my people. Your quick thinking bought us time." Her pulse quickened. The black sedan from her window that morning. Coincidence? She glanced at the window, half expecting shadows. Tailed? By who? Rivals. The Morettis. Old grudge over dock territories. They know my weaknesses. He checked his watch, a subtle tick. "We leave for the estate in an hour. Convoy. If you're in, pack light. No fragrances." The offer hung, a lifeline laced with hooks. Elena nodded slowly, curiosity outweighing caution. As the suits returned to escort her to a waiting lounge, stocked with water and plain snacks, she caught a glimpse of Dante on his phone, voice low. "Double the watch on the river routes, and check her building, anyone lingering." The words chilled her, the faint crackle of his earpiece echoing like distant thunder. Down in the garage, the convoy assembled. 3 SUVs, engines purring like restrained beasts. Elena climbed into the middle vehicle, Dante joining her in the back, a respectful distance between them. The barriers rose, tires crunching over gravel as they merged onto the expressway heading north, toward the suburbs, where mansions hid behind iron gates and evergreens. But in the side mirror, a silver sedan lingered 2 cars back, its plates obscured by a glint of sun. Dante noticed, too, his hand drifting to a concealed holster under his jacket. "Stay close," he murmured, the air between them thickening with unspoken stakes. Was the tale Moretti muscle, or something closer? A leak in his own ranks? As the skyline receded, Elena wondered if she just traded one current for a riptide, and what secrets the estate's walls would whisper once they arrived. The convoy sliced through the northern suburbs, like a shadow detaching from the city, the expressway giving way to winding lanes flanked by ancient oaks and stone walls veiled in ivy. Elena gripped the armrest, the leather cool and supple under her fingers, as the lead SUV's brake lights flared briefly, a silent signal. Dante sat beside her, his presence a contained storm. Broad shoulders squared, gaze fixed on the side mirror where the silver sedan still hovered, now 3 vehicles back, its tinted windows reflecting the late afternoon sun like blind eyes. The air in the Lincoln hummed with the low growl of the engine and the faint static of comms from the front seat, where the driver murmured updates into a hidden mic. "They're persistent," Dante said quietly, his voice a rumble that cut through the tension without shattering it. He didn't look at her, but his knee brushed hers in the confined space, an accidental anchor. Moretti scouts, likely. They probe for weaknesses, like dogs circling a fence. Elena swallowed, the metallic tang of nerves on her tongue. "And if they follow us all the way?" She kept her eyes on the passing landscape, manicured estates blurring into a green haze, the distant lap of Lake Michigan against unseen shores carrying a briny whisper through the vents. "Then we handle it. My code's simple. No innocents caught in the crossfire." His fingers drummed once on his thigh, a betraying tick. "But you're not part of this yet. That's why the offer stands. Walk away after the party if you want." The estate emerged like a fortress from the mist-shrouded drive, a sprawling Tudor mansion of weathered brick and leaded windows, ringed by iron gates that swung open with a hydraulic sigh. Security lights flickered on prematurely, casting long shadows across gravel paths lined with evergreens that rustled in the wind. The convoy pulled into a courtyard dominated by a fountain, water gurgling softly over marble, the only sound breaking the oppressive quiet. Armed guards materialized from alcoves, nodding to Dante as he stepped out, extending a hand to Elena with surprising gentleness. His touch was firm, calloused from years of boardrooms and backroom deals, yet it lingered a fraction too long, sending a spark up her arm. "Welcome to the Rossi compound," he said, guiding her toward the oak double doors. The air here smelled of damp earth and polished stone, laced with the faint ozone of surveillance systems humming in the walls. No floral gardens, no perfumed blooms, just utilitarian hedges and motion sensor floodlights that swept the perimeter like watchful sentinels. Inside, the foyer unfolded in vaulted grandeur, vaulted ceilings echoing with the creak of floorboards underfoot, walls paneled in dark walnut that absorbed light and sound alike. A crystal chandelier dangled overhead, its prisms scattering muted rainbows, but the space felt less like a home and more like a command center, cameras discreetly embedded in crown moldings, their red LEDs blinking like distant stars. Dante's son, Luca, waited at the base of a sweeping staircase, a small boy with tousled black hair and eyes mirroring his father's. Wide, curious, but shadowed by something deeper. He clutched a toy truck, wheels scarred from rough play, and eyed Elena with a mix of wariness and hope. "Daddy's friend?" Luca asked, voice piping in the echoing hall. He didn't approach, feet planted on the Persian rug that muffled his sneakers. Dante knelt to his level, ruffling the boy's hair. "Yeah, kid. Elena's here to help with your big day. No fuss, no crowds that make me, you know." He glanced at her, a vulnerability cracking his facade. The allergy that isolated him extended to his son, a legacy of caution born from a wife's untimely death years ago, whispers of poison in her perfume fueling endless paranoia. Elena smiled, crouching down to meet Luca's gaze. "Hi, I like your truck. Does it go fast on the river roads?" She kept her voice light, no sense to trigger alarms. Her sweater's plain weave a deliberate choice. Luca's face brightened, inching closer. "Super fast, but Daddy says the river's tricky. Currents pull you under if you're not careful." The words hung innocently, but Dante's jaw tightened, a subtle tell of old wounds. His wife's accident on those very docks ruled a drowning but never fully trusted. As Luca scampered ahead toward the kitchens, promising a tour of his secret fort, Dante led Elena to a guest wing, corridors branching like veins in a hidden labyrinth. "He's a good kid," he murmured, pausing at a door to her suite, crisp linens on a four-poster bed, a window overlooking the walled gardens where guards patrolled in pairs. "Lost his mother young. I keep him close, but the world's closing in. Moretti's have been sniffing around shipments, tampered manifests, burner phones popping up in our routes. Last week, a guard went missing near the warehouses. Elena's mind raced, piecing fragments, the tail on the highway, the sedan's obscured plates. You think they're after more than territory? Something personal?" He nodded, unlocking a side door to reveal a small office. Ledgers stacked neatly, a laptop screen glowing with encrypted logs of dock rotations and cargo manifests. "Possibly. Found this in a drop last night." He tapped a printout, a shipping schedule with a circled entry. Rossi crates rerouted to a rival pier, annotated in hasty scrawl. "Internal leak or external pressure. My men's rotations are tight, but human error." His eyes met hers, intense. "You saved me once. Trust like that's rare. Stay through the party. Help with Luca. If things heat up, you'll see the real proposition. Not just a job, but a shield." The words stirred something in her. Autonomy, clashing with the pull of his world, where power came wrapped in peril. She wanted to probe deeper, but a soft chime from his pocket interrupted. An alert on his phone, showing the silver sedan captured on the estate's outer cams, idling at a gas station 2 miles out. "They're circling," he said, voice hardening. "Security details on it, but no risks tonight." Dinner was served in a private dining room, candlelight flickering off silverware without wax scents to offend. Luca chattered about his birthday plans, a low-key affair with cake and games in the safe room, while Dante watched Elena with a gaze that bordered on possessive, yet restrained by his code. The food was simple: grilled meats, fresh breads, the aroma of herbs rising like steam from the river fog outside. But midway through, Luca's nanny, a wiry woman with sharp eyes and a faint tremor in her hands, entered with a tray of juice. "For the boy," she said, voice clipped, but Elena caught it. A subtle glance at Dante, too lingering, and the way her sleeve rode up to reveal a fresh bruise on her wrist. Dante noticed too, his fork pausing midair. "Everything all right, Maria?" His tone was even, but the air thickened, loyalty tested against suspicion. "Fine, sir. Just a clumsy fall." She retreated quickly, but not before Elena spotted the burner phone peeking from her apron pocket, screen lighting with an incoming message. As the meal wrapped, Luca yawned and was ushered to bed, leaving Elena and Dante alone by the hearth, its fire crackling softly. "See what I mean?" he said, pouring water from a crystal decanter. "Paranoia or prudence? The Morettis buy loyalty cheap, threats, bribes. If she's turned... Elena's heart pounded, the room's shadows deepening as rain pattered against the panes. You can't suspect everyone. What if it's just fear? His hand brushed hers on the armrest, a deliberate warmth. Fear's what keeps us alive. But you make it feel like trust might be worth the risk. The moment stretched, charged, until a distant alarm buzzed. Perimeter breach, the silver sedan breaching the outer fence. Dante stood, drawing her up. Stay here, guards will handle it. But as he moved toward the door, Elena glimpsed the nanny slipping down a back hall, phone in hand. Was the leak closer than they thought? And would the night unravel everything before the party even began? If you're enjoying this story so far, tell us in the comments where in the world you're watching from. The rain intensified as night cloaked the Rossi estate, drumming against the leaded windows like impatient fingers on a locked door. Elena's pulse echoed the rhythm, her hand still warm from Dante's brief touch, as the alarm's low buzz cut through the hearth's crackle. He moved with predatory grace toward the door, his silhouette framed by the fire's glow, but paused to glance back, eyes sharp, assessing her resolve. Lock this behind me. If anyone knocks who isn't Luca, ignore it. His voice was steel wrapped in velvet, the code of protection threading every word. No innocents harmed. It was his vow, etched from the loss that had left Luca motherless, a drowning he still dissected in quiet hours. She nodded, the door's heavy oak ceiling with a thud that reverberated through her chest. The dining room felt cavernous now, shadows pooling in the corners where the chandelier's light couldn't reach. The scent of cooling herbs from dinner lingered, mingling with the earthy petrichor seeping through the vents. Elena paced to the window, peering into the storm-lashed courtyard. Floodlights swept the gravel in arcs, illuminating guards in black tactical gear, rifles slung low, earpieces crackling with terse updates. The silver sedan was nowhere in sight, but its ghost haunted the perimeter, a breach that screamed calculated intrusion. Minutes stretched into an eternity, the only sounds the rain's relentless tattoo and the distant hum of generators kicking in, powering backup systems against any blackout ploy. Elena's mind raced back to the nanny, Maria. That furtive glance, the bruise blooming like a warning on her skin, the burner phone's illicit glow. Human error, Dante had said. But this felt like fracture lines in his empire, a ledger of loyalties cracking under Moretti pressure. She edged toward the side door Maria had used, curiosity overriding caution. The corridor beyond was dim, lit by sconces that cast elongated shadows on the paneled walls, the air cooler here, laced with the faint metallic tang of hidden wiring. A soft scuff of footsteps halted her. Maria emerged from a service alcove, tray balanced precariously, her face pale under the harsh light. "Miss, you shouldn't be out here." Her voice trembled, eyes darting to the shadows as if expecting company. The apron pocket sagged slightly, the phone's outline unmistakable. Elena stepped forward, keeping her tone neutral, like calming a skittish diner patron. "Just stretching my legs." "The alarm, everything okay?" She scanned Maria's wrist. The bruise had darkened, fingerprints faint but deliberate. Not a falls accident. Maria's grip tightened on the tray, knuckles whitening. "False alarm, they say. Mr. Rossi's men are thorough." But her gaze flicked to a side table, where a notepad lay open. Hasty scribbles, numbers that matched the circled entry in Dante's manifest. Access codes, guard rotations. Elena's breath caught. It was too coincidental, the leak manifesting right under the roof. Before she could press, a muffled shout echoed from the courtyard. Boots on gravel, the sharp crack of a radio. Maria flinched, the tray tipping. A glass shattered on the floor, shards glinting like broken trust. "Please, go back," she whispered, urgency cracking her facade. "It's not safe. They know about the boy." The words slipped out, raw with fear, before she clamped her mouth shut, eyes wide with regret. Elena's instincts flared, the same quick thinking that had saved Dante in the diner. Who knows? The Morettis? Maria, if you're in trouble. A hand clamped over Elena's mouth from behind, firm but not bruising. A guard, his breath steady against her ear. Boss's orders. Inside. Now. He steered her back to the dining room, the door locking with electronic finality. Through the window, she saw Dante striding across the courtyard, flanked by 2 men, their flashlights cutting through the downpour. The silver sedan had been found abandoned at the tree line, engine still warm. Plates swapped for fakes, classic misdirection, buying time for an infiltrator. No shots fired, no blood. Dante's code held, but the cost was exposure, the estate's veil thinning. Back in the room, Elena sank into an armchair, the fire's warmth doing little to dispel the chill. Her phone, left in her suite, vibrated in memory. She'd silenced it upon arrival, but now she itched to check for messages from her own world, a tether to normalcy. Instead, she replayed Maria's slip. They know about the boy. Luca, innocent in his toy trucks and river tales, a vulnerability Dante guarded like a vault. The allergy that isolated him extended to his son, a shared fragility in a world of scents and secrets. Elena's own life, scraping by on diner tips. Her mother's hospital debts a constant shadow. Felt worlds away, yet here she was, entangled in currents deeper than the Chicago River. The door reopened after what felt like hours, Dante entering alone, rain dripping from his coat, leaving dark spots on the rug. His face was a mask, but tension etched lines around his eyes. Handled. Decoy vehicle. Remote jammer on the fence to trigger the alarm. They're testing us, probing for the party tomorrow. He shrugged off the coat, revealing a shoulder holster, the weight of it a reminder of restrained power. Maria? Elena stood, meeting his gaze. She seemed scared. Mentioned something about Luca. Said they know. And I saw her phone, the notepad with numbers that looked like your schedules. His jaw clenched, a flicker of betrayal crossing his features. Burner, I'll question her at dawn. No rash moves tonight. He poured water from the decanter, offering her a glass. Their fingers brushed again, deliberate this time, a spark in the charged air. You did good spotting it. Trust like yours. It's pulling me in, Elena, more than the job. The admission hung, possessiveness warring with his isolation, her independence clashing against the shield he offered. Outside, thunder rolled, masking the whine of a drone overhead. Moretti surveillance, perhaps, or his own countermeasures. But as Dante stepped closer, the space between them narrowing, a soft knock echoed from the guest wing. Luca's voice, small and insistent. Daddy? I heard noises. Is Elena still here? Dante hesitated, glancing at her with a mix of protectiveness and something deeper, unspoken. The night was far from over, and with Maria's shadow lurking, the real threat might be waiting inside the walls. What if the nanny's fear masked a deeper allegiance, and the triplets of danger, Luca's safety among them, were already in play? Dante's hand froze on the decanter, the crystal facets catching the firelight like fractured ice. Luca's knock came again, softer this time, a child's plea threading through the storm's fury outside. Elena felt the weight of the moment shift, the air in the dining room thickening with unspoken layers, Dante's isolation cracking under the pull of family, her own life a distant echo in this vaulted world of shadows and secrets. He crossed the room in 2 strides, unlocking the door with a quiet click that echoed like a concession. Luca stood there in rumpled pajamas, clutching a stuffed bear with one ear missing, his dark eyes wide against the dim hall light. Rain pattered against a nearby window, carrying the faint, briny scent of the lake through a cracked pane. I had a bad dream, he mumbled, glancing past his father to Elena. The river was rising, and the trucks couldn't get away. Dante scooped him up effortlessly, the boy's small frame nestling against his chest without a flinch. No sense to trigger the allergy that haunted them both. "Just a storm, kid. Elena's here. She'll tell you stories about fast trucks if you want." His voice softened, the gravel edge yielding to paternal warmth. But his eyes flicked to Elena, a silent request, or perhaps an invitation to bridge the gap his code had enforced for years. Elena stepped forward, kneeling to Luca's level as Dante set him down. The rug's wool fibers muffled her sneakers, and up close, she saw the faint shadows under the boy's eyes, echoes of a life guarded too tightly. "Hey, Luca. My old neighborhood had trucks that hauled everything from steel to secrets. One time, I saw one outrun a whole traffic jam, tires humming like a race car." She kept her tone light, hands visible and empty, no gestures that might spook him. Luca's face lit up, the bear forgotten as he tugged her sleeve. "Can you tell me more? In my room?" He looked to Dante for permission, the dynamic clear. The magnate's empire bent to this small ruler's whims. Dante nodded, a rare hesitation in his posture. Short story, then bed. He guided them down the corridor, the sconces casting elongated shadows that danced like wary sentinels. The air grew cooler, laced with the subtle hum of air purifiers whirring behind vents. Dante's unseen armor against the world's invisible threats. Elena's mind raced ahead. Maria's burner phone, the notepad scrawled codes. If the nanny was the leak, Luca's safety hung by a thread thinner than the boy's pajamas. Luca's room was a fortress of innocence amid the mansion's austerity. Walls painted a soft blue like the river at dawn. Bookshelves crammed with vehicle models and adventure tales. A nightlight glowing with the shape of a barge. No plush toys scented with lavender. Everything was washed in unscented soaps, a ritual born of Dante's vigilance. As Elena settled on the bed's edge, spinning a tale of a daring truck evading a foggy chase along the docks, Dante leaned against the doorframe, arms crossed. His gaze lingered on her, intense and unguarded, the firelight from the hall gilding his features. Possessiveness flickered there, tempered by the autonomy he sensed in her. The diner girl who asked for nothing, now weaving safety into his son's world. The story ended with Luca's yawns, his eyelids drooping as Dante tucked him in, murmuring a good night that carried the weight of promises kept. In the hall, the door clicked shut, and Dante turned to Elena, closer now, the space between them charged like the air before lightning. "You have a way with him. Most people. They try too hard." His hand rose, brushing a stray hair from her face, deliberate, testing boundaries his allergy had long enforced. No perfume, no lotions. Just her natural scent of rain-washed cotton, safe and drawing him in despite the risks. Elena's breath caught, independence warring with the spark his touch ignited. He's a good kid, deserves more than shadows. She stepped back slightly, glancing toward the service corridor. "But Maria, we can't ignore what I saw. If she's talking to the Morettis..." Dante's expression hardened, the moment fracturing. "Dawn. I'll handle it my way. No accusations without proof." He pulled a slim tablet from his pocket, screen illuminating his face with a cold blue glow. "Security feed. Watch." He tapped, pulling up grainy footage from the courtyard cams. The silver sedan's abandonment, then a time-stamped clip from the kitchens. Maria, slipping out a side door at midnight, hood up against the rain, meeting a figure in the tree line. Brief exchange, a folded paper passed, then retreat. No faces clear, but the paper's edge caught the light. A manifest page, identical to the tampered one in his office. Elena's stomach twisted, the investigative thread tightening like a noose. "That's your shipping route. She's selling it out. Guard rotations, access codes. Why? Money? Threats? Both, probably." Dante's voice was low, laced with betrayal's bitter edge. Her brother's in deep with Moretti loans, debts from a bad bet on the docks. They lean, she folds. He pocketed the tablet, the hum of his earpiece crackling to life. A voice from perimeter, drone-sighted, low altitude. They're mapping us for tomorrow. Tension coiled, the storm outside mirroring the one building within. Elena's mind flashed to her own vulnerabilities. Her apartment, unsecured, a potential pressure point. What about my place? If they know about me. Already covered. Details on it. Burner traces from your block. His eyes met hers, fierce. You're in this now, Elena, but I protect what's mine. The words hung possessive, pulling at her resolve, loyalty to her old life clashing with the shield he offered. A distant thud echoed from the lower levels. Perhaps a door, or something heavier. Dante tensed, hand drifting to his holster. Stay with Luca. I'll check the feeds. He moved down the hall, leaving her at the boy's door, heart pounding. She slipped inside quietly, the nightlight's glow a fragile beacon. Luca stirred, murmuring in sleep about rivers and rescues. But as Elena settled in an armchair by the window, peering into the rain-swept gardens, a new alert buzzed on the room's intercom. Motion in the tunnels beneath the estate. Old smuggling paths from Prohibition days, now used for secure shipments. Guards were rerouting, but the signal flickered. Jammed? Human error? Or deliberate sabotage? Maria's footsteps padded past the door, heading downward, a shadow in the sconce light. Elena's pulse raced. Confront her now, or wait for Dante's code to unfold. And if the Morettis were already inside, burrowing like the river's undercurrents, what price would loyalty exact before dawn broke? Elena's fingers tightened on the armchair's armrest, the fabric rough under her nails like the grit of the diner's counter back home. Luca's soft breathing filled the room, a rhythmic anchor in the storm's chaos outside. But Maria's footsteps lingered in her ears, deliberate, retreating toward the lower levels. The intercom's alert had cut off abruptly, leaving a digital silence that hummed with menace. Tunnels beneath the estate. Dante had mentioned them once, in passing, as relics of bootleg runs, now repurposed for discreet cargo shifts along the river's hidden veins. If Maria was heading there, phone in hand, it wasn't for a midnight snack. She glanced at the boy, his small chest rising and falling under the quilt, the nightlight casting barge shapes on the walls like ghostly vessels. Leaving him alone felt wrong, a violation of the fragile trust she'd earned, but inaction gnawed deeper. Dante's code, no innocence harmed, extended to her now, or so he'd implied with that possessive edge in his voice. Yet her independence rebelled. She wasn't his to shield entirely. Slipping her feet into silent slippers from the room's closet, Elena eased the door open, the hinges whispering like a conspirator. The corridor stretched dim and endless, sconces flickering as if the power strained against the rain's assault. The air grew damper, carrying the faint, musty tang of stone and earth from below, a reminder that the mansion sat atop a labyrinth of history's shadows. She followed the path Maria had taken, past closed doors and security panels that blinked green, unalarmed. A service stairwell yawned at the end, its metal railing cold and slick with condensation. Descending, each step echoed faintly, the walls closing in like the river's banks during flood. At the bottom, a heavy door barred the way, secured by a keypad glowing faintly. Elena hesitated, recalling the notepad's scrawls, codes, rotations. She punched in the sequence from memory. 4729, the date of Luca's birthday Dante had mentioned offhand. The lock disengaged with a soft beep, too easy, as if the system trusted its own. Beyond lay the tunnels, concrete corridors lit by harsh LED strips, the air thick with the hum of ventilation fans and the distant drip of water seeping from above. Pipes snaked along the ceiling, carrying the estate's lifeblood. Water, power, secrets. Voices drifted from ahead, low and urgent, bouncing off the walls like echoes in a confessional. Elena pressed against the curve, peering around. Maria stood under a junction light, burner phone pressed to her ear, her free hand clutching a satchel that bulged with papers. Yes, the boy's asleep. Rossi's distracted with the breach. The manifest's clean. Reroute at Pier 17. Dawn shift. Her voice cracked, fear lacing the words, the bruise on her wrist stark under the light. Across from her, a man in a hooded jacket, lean, unfamiliar, nodded. His face half-shadowed, but the Moretti insignia glinted on his cuff, a stylized anchor, symbol of their dock dominance. Elena's heart slammed against her ribs, the chill seeping through her sweater. Human error, Dante had called it. But this was calculated fracture, a turncoat feeding rivals the keys to his empire. The man stepped closer, voice a gravel whisper. Good work. Boss says the kid's leverage. Grab him if the heat rises. Payment wired once the shipment hits. Maria recoiled slightly. No, I told you. Debt's cleared, nothing more. My brother's safe, or I walk. But her eyes darted, betrayal warring with desperation, the ledger of her choices tipping toward survival. Before Elena could retreat, her slipper scraped stone, a tiny betrayal of sound. The man spun, hand diving into his jacket, eyes narrowing on the shadows. Who's there? Maria gasped, phone clattering to the floor, its screen fracturing like trust. Elena bolted back up the stairs, legs burning, the door slamming behind her just as footsteps pounded in pursuit. She raced through the corridors, breath ragged, the mansion's grandeur mocking her flight. Alarms wailed anew, red lights pulsing along the baseboards, perimeter breach escalating to internal alert. She burst into the guest wing, slamming Luca's door and locking it, barricading with the armchair as thunder shook the windows. Dante's voice crackled over the intercom, urgent but controlled. Elena, report. She grabbed the room's landline, fumbling the receiver. Tunnels. Maria's meeting a Moretti. Manifests. Codes. They mentioned Luca. Silence. Then his boots thudding closer, the door rattling as he keyed in. He entered like a force, rain-slicked from a patio patrol, eyes blazing with restrained fury. Luca stirred but didn't wake, the boy's innocence a stark contrast to the storm in his father's gaze. Dante pulled her aside, voice low. You went down there? Damn it. I had to, she whispered fiercely, autonomy flaring against his protectiveness. She's selling you out. For her brother, but it's real. The man's here, inside. His jaw tightened, code clashing with the urge to act. Loyalty tested, his vow to shield innocence now a blade against his own. Guards are sealing the tunnels. No shots. We extract quiet. He touched her arm, grip firm. The contact lingering. A pull toward her that defied his isolation. The allergies barriers crumbling in the heat of shared peril. You keep seeing what others miss. Stay with him. I'll end this. As he slipped out, coordinating via earpiece, the hum of radios a tense symphony, Elena sank beside Luca's bed, the boy's hand finding hers in sleep. Outside, shouts echoed from below. Muffled scuffles in the tunnels. No gunfire, just grapples and zip ties. Dante's men upholding the code. But a new alert buzzed. Power flicker in the east wing. Lights dimming as rain shorted lines. Was it sabotage or the storm's natural fury? Maria's satchel. Did it hold more than manifests like a planted device to jam comms? Dante's voice returned over the line, strained. Got the intruder. Maria's in custody, talking, but the manifest's gone. Something's off. Convoys delayed at the docks. Elena's mind raced. If the Morettis had the roots, Dawn's shipment was bait, a trap closing on the river. And with Luca's name whispered as leverage, the night's fractures threatened to swallow them all. What hidden blade would Maria reveal next? And could Dante's code hold before the currents drag them under? If this tale already has you hooked, hit the like button. It helps us bring more hidden stories to light. The storm's fury peaked as dawn crept over the Rossi estate, a gray veil lifting the night's blackout like a reluctant curtain. Power had flickered back on hours ago, generators rumbling to life with a guttural cough that shook the foundations. But the air inside Luca's room hung heavy with the scent of damp wool and cooling stone. Elena hadn't slept. Her vigil by the boy's bed, a tense weave of whispered reassurances to herself. Autonomy, her shield against the pull of Dante's world, where every shadow hid a blade. Luca stirred now, rubbing his eyes as morning light filtered through the rain-streaked windows, the distant lap of the river audible like a conspirator's murmur. "Daddy?" the boy mumbled, sitting up with his bear clutched tight. Elena smoothed the quilt, her voice steady despite the ache in her limbs. "He's handling things downstairs. Breakfast soon. Pancakes, maybe?" She forced a smile, but her mind replayed the tunnel scuffle. Muffled thuds, Maria's desperate pleas echoing up the stairs before silence swallowed them. Dante's code had prevailed. No blood, just restraints and questions. But the manifest's loss gnawed like an open wound. If the Morettis had those roots, the Dawn shipment at Pier 17 was a sitting duck. Crates of legitimate steel masking whatever deeper cargo fueled Rossi's empire. Footsteps approached, heavy and measured. Dante entered without knocking, his shirt untucked and sleeves rolled to reveal forearms corded with tension, a faint bruise blooming on his knuckles from the grapple. No holster now, the immediate threat contained, but his eyes, dark pools reflecting the storm's remnants, betrayed the cost. "Luca, buddy. Up and at 'em. Elena's got the day covered." He ruffled the boy's hair, the gesture paternal steel, then turned to her, voice low as Luca scampered to the bathroom. "Maria's in the holding room, spilled enough. Her brother's drowning in Moretti debt, forced her hand with threats to his family. The intruder's a low-level runner. We got a name, plates on his burner. But the satchel, empty except for a jammer. They knew we'd find the meeting." Elena's pulse quickened, piecing the logistics. The device explained the flickering signals, a cheap tech ploy to blind cams during the handoff. "So, the manifest's en route to their docks? Your convoy?" "Delayed. Guard rotation compromised. One of mine called in sick last night." Voice sounded off on the radio log. He pulled a folded printout from his pocket. Call transcripts, timestamps mismatched by minutes. Human error, or a deeper rot. Dante's jaw tightened, legacy weighing on him. His father's code, never harm innocents, now tested by betrayal's ripple. "I can't risk the pier, not with the party today. Luca's 5. It has to be clean." She stood, independence flaring against his containment. "Then let me help. I saw the notepad codes. Maybe cross-check with your ledgers, if there's a pattern." Curiosity, that old debt from the diner night, pulled her deeper, clashing with the prudence screaming to walk away. Her own life, diner shifts, her mother's unanswered calls, felt like a fading echo, supplanted by this found tether. Dante studied her, the space between them humming with unresolved charge. His allergies' isolation had kept women at bay, but her unadorned presence chipped at it, a safe harbor in his guarded sea. "All right, but armed escort. No solos." He nodded to the door, where a guard waited, earpiece coiled. As Luca emerged, chattering about cake flavors, they moved to the estate's lower library, a wood-paneled sanctum smelling of aged paper and oiled leather, shelves lined with encrypted files and glowing monitors. The river view dominated one wall, its waters churning slate gray under a clearing sky, barges cutting paths like veins in the city's underbelly. Luca settled with crayons at a side table, drawing trucks on the docks, while Elena and Dante pored over the ledgers at a massive oak desk. The air purifier's whirred softly, filtering out the world's scents, but tension laced the room like smoke. She traced a finger down a column. Shipping manifests. Dates aligning with Maria's scribbles. Here, Pier 17 reroute, but the guard call-in matches a Moretti front number. Subtle. Looks like a wrong dial, but the timing. Dante leaned in, their shoulders brushing, a deliberate proximity that sent warmth through her sweater. Smart catch. Internal. One of the outer crew's been off. Late reports. Evasive on rotations. His voice dropped, possessiveness threading through. You fit here, Elena. Seeing the tells others miss. After the party. Stay. Not as help, as part of this. The offer hung. Loyalty versus her autonomy, his code extending like a vow. Protection, not possession, but the line blurred in the quiet. Before she could respond, his phone buzzed. A secure line, the screen flashing dock alert. He answered, face hardening. Talk. Static crackled, then a driver's voice. Boss, convoys hit a snag. Roadblock on the access road. Cops, but badges look funny. Plates from a ghost vehicle, and there's a tail van, unmarked. Elena's stomach knotted. Staged, the environment turning hazardous, blackouts giving way to ambushes. Dante stood, signaling the guard. Reroute to secondary tunnel exit. No stops. He hung up, eyes meeting hers. Moretti's forcing a play. Diversion to hit the pier empty. Luca's party guests arrive soon. We can't draw heat here. Luca looked up, crayon pausing. Is it the bad guys from the river? Dante knelt, voice even. Just traffic, kid. Elena and I got it. But as he rose, a secondary alert chimed. Estate cams picking up a false fire alarm in the kitchens. Smoke from a tampered stove, guards scrambling. Infiltration or panic ploy? The boy's drawing lay forgotten, trucks tipping into sketched waves. Elena grabbed the ledger, tucking it under her arm. I'll check the feeds with security. You handle the convoy. Independence won. She wouldn't cower. Dante nodded, a flicker of pride and fear in his gaze, before striding out, the door's click echoing like a starting gun. In the control room down the hall, banks of monitors flickering with sodium-lit exteriors, the hum of servers like distant generators. 2 guards nodded her in. The air smelled of circuit boards and stale coffee, screens showing the roadblock, squad cars blocking the tunnel ramp, officers milling with deliberate slowness. But one van idled nearby, its side panel cracked open, revealing a glint of rifle scopes. Behavioral tell, no urgency, just watch. Zoom on the plates, she said, voice steady. The guard complied, pixels sharpening, swapped again, but the VIN trace pulled a hit, registered to a Moretti shell company, tied to warehouse leases near the river. They're stalling your shipment to raid it. Call it off. Fake a mechanical. The guard radioed, but static jammed the line, the jammer's echo from Maria's satchel lingering in the system. Outside, the false fire escalated. Shouts from the kitchens, water sprinklers hissing to life, soaking the courtyard in a metallic spray. Guests' cars approached the gates, oblivious, but the chaos masked a deeper infill, shadowy figures slipping the perimeter fence amid the diversion. Elena's mind raced, Dante's convoy trapped, the estate exposed, Luca's party a powder keg. She snatched a spare radio, clipping it to her waistband. I'm going to the kitchens. Clear the alarm manually. The guard protested, but she was out, corridors blurring as she ran, the river's roar swelling like applause for the unraveling. In the kitchens, steam billowed from a sabotaged burner, pots clattering as staff evacuated. No flames, just acrid smoke from overheated wiring. Deliberate. Buying time. Elena killed the gas line, hands steady from diner crises, but as the sprinklers died, a side door creaked open. A figure slipped in. Not Moretti muscle, but a familiar face. Maria's brother, gaunt and desperate, eyes wild under the hood. Where's my sister? They said bring the kid. Or she pays. The revelation hit like a current. The true leak wasn't just debt. It was family leverage, organized deeper than manifests. Elena backed toward the hall, radio crackling to life. "Dante, it's inside. Kitchen door. He's here for Luca." But the line jammed again, and the man advanced, no weapon drawn yet, but the threat coiled in his stance. As alarms wailed anew, Elena wondered if Dante's code could contain this flood. Family against family. Betrayal's tide rising. And if her choice to dive in would save them, or drag them all under before the party guests even arrived. The kitchen's steam hung like a veil, acrid and clinging, as Elena backed against the stainless steel counter, its edge biting into her hip. Maria's brother loomed in the doorway, rain dripping from his hood onto the tiled floor, pooling like spilled ink. His eyes darted, wild, cornered, scanning the billowing smoke for an escape or a target. No gun visible, but his hands flexed, knuckles scarred from dock brawls, the Moretti anchor tattoo peeking from his cuff like a brand. The false fire alarm wailed on, a piercing dirge masking the chaos outside, where party guests' cars crunched up the drive, oblivious to the undercurrents churning beneath. "Listen," Elena said, voice level, channeling the calm she'd used on diner fights. "Your sister's safe. Dante's holding her, not hurting. Hand over whatever they gave you, and we talk. No one's crossing lines here." Her radio crackled faintly, jammed signal fighting through. But the man's advance cut it short. He lunged, not for her, but past, toward the hall leading to the guest wing. Luca's safety, the leverage whispered in the tunnels. Now a desperate grab amid the sprinkler's dying hiss. Elena sidestepped, grabbing a heavy mixing bowl from the counter, its weight solid, improvised shield, and swung low, clipping his knee. He stumbled, cursing under his breath, the satchel from Maria's meeting spilling open. Not just manifests, but a slim tracker device blinking red, synced to the Moretti van at the roadblock. Human error amplified by tech. Cheap GPS to tag the convoy, turning delay into ambush. "You don't want this," she pressed, autonomy fueling her stand. Debts end with choices, not kids. Footsteps thundered from the corridor. Dante's guards, two burly figures bursting through the steam, tasers drawn but held. "Down! Now!" The lead barked, voice gravel over the alarm. The brother froze, hands up, the fight draining from him like the sprinkler's last drops. No shots, no blood. Dante's code rippled through them, restraint a legacy etched in every move. They zip-tied him swiftly, dragging him toward the holding cells below, the tracker's signal killed with a boot-heel crunch. Dante appeared seconds later, face etched with Storm's remnants, his presence filling the doorway like a bulwark. He scanned her, unhurt, unbroken, relief flickering in his obsidian eyes before the magnate's mask snapped back. "You all right?" His hand grazed her shoulder, firm anchor amid the dissipating haze, the touch lingering longer than protocol, pulling her into his orbit despite the allergy's old walls. Elena nodded, exhaling the tension. He was after Luca, leverage for Maria's debts. The tracker's what jammed your comms. Moretti's plan to hit the convoy blind. The ledger she'd tucked away weighed heavy in her waistband, its pages a map of near misses, rotations, plates, behavioral tells from the sick guard, a cousin to Maria, bought cheap. Dante's jaw clenched, betrayal's cost settling like the rain's aftermath. Convoys pulling back, rerouted through the old tunnels. No raid. We flood the pier with decoys. Let them chase ghosts. He glanced outside, where guests milled in the courtyard, umbrellas blooming like wary flowers, Luca's party unfolding under watchful eyes. The boy darted among them later, cake-frosted and laughing, his world intact. The shadows held at bay. But victory stung. Maria's family fractured, a guard exposed and cut loose, the empire's edges scarred by internal rot. Dante's code held. No innocence lost, but exposure lingered, rivals regrouping across the river's divide. As evening fell, the estate quieted, guests departing with polite nods and sealed lips. The rivers hum a soothing underscore through the windows. Luca slept soundly, his drawings of triumphant trucks pinned to his wall, a child's legacy of resilience. Dante found Elena in the library, the fire crackling low, ledgers closed like resolved chapters. The air between them thickened, charged with the day's perils and unspoken pulls. His possessiveness tempered by her independence, loyalty forged in shared fire. "You saved more than me tonight," he murmured, settling beside her on the leather settee, close enough that his warmth bridged the gap his allergies had enforced. No scents, no barriers, just her, clean and steady. "Luca, the roots. Us." His fingers intertwined with hers, deliberate, the contact of vow breaking isolation's chains. Elena's heart raced, ethics clashing with the trust they'd built. The diner's rescue evolving into this found family, her autonomy yielding to a future laced with peril, but rich in protection. It's not just saving, it's choosing. She leaned in, their lips meeting softly, a spark igniting without trigger. The night's quiet wrapping them like a safe house. They spent the night in his suite, the mansion's vastness shrinking to whispers and shared breaths, the river's distant lap a lullaby. No rush, no conquest, just connection, his code extending to intimacy's careful dance, her presence the antidote to years alone. Dawn brought clarity, the storm's gifts, trust sealed, a pledge unspoken but profound. Weeks blurred into months, the Moretti threat quelled by dismantled networks, arrests via traced burners, manifests audited clean. Elena stayed, not as assistant but partner, her diner days traded for a life woven with Luca's laughter and Dante's restrained power. But one crisp autumn morning, in the estate's sunlit kitchen smelling of fresh bread and earth, nausea hit like a rogue current. A discreet clinic visit confirmed it. Triplets, conceived that stormy night, a miracle defying odds in his guarded world. Dante's face, upon hearing, softened to wonder, hands framing her still flat belly, his allergies' isolation shattered by this legacy of 3. "Our family," he whispered, voice gravel warm. "Protection, trust, what we fought for." The true treasure wasn't empires or spoils, but this, loyalty enduring, memories etched deeper than ledgers, transformation binding them against the tides. The river flowed on, unchanged, but their current ran stronger, found family outlasting power's shadows, a code rewritten in new life. Subscribe to our channel for more incredible tales of loyalty, danger, and found family. See you in the next story.